Hey, what's up, high levelers? It's Andrew. Today we're talking about the Notion and HighLevel native integration. Now, this is super cool because we have a unique set of triggers and actions for our workflows in order to manage our databases and projects that we have hosted in Notion through HighLevel. So this is super exciting. Let's dive right in. To get started, this integration will be first set up from the settings screen by going to settings and then navigating to integrations. And then from here, if we scroll down, we'll be able to see our Notion integration here. All we have to do is click connect, and then this is going to start the Notion connection process. Once we get here, we'll simply need to see all the different permissions that we are giving HighLevel/lead connector, and then click select pages. This is where we can select different pages we have in Notion, aka these are kind of like our projects. So we have a few different projects here, like a habit tracker, a monthly budget, a website project, travel planners, to-do lists, things like this. You can do a ton of cool stuff with Notion, like task lists and project management and building little systems for you to manage kind of your life and your work with Notion. So we love all of these, and we're just going to click select all so we can use all of our different pages that we have within Notion, and we'll click allow. So now that our Notion is connected, we can go back to our automations, and let's dive into some cool automations, use cases, our workflow triggers and actions within a brand new workflow here. Let's start with looking at our triggers by clicking add new trigger and then finding our Notion triggers in our workflow triggers system. So we have 4 triggers for Notion. One is new database item. A second is updated database item. So whenever something's updated in Notion, then we have page updated and comment added. Now this polling 5 minutes is similar to other integrations in that with Notion, it is looking for these requests every 5 minutes. So this can depend on exactly what Notion plan you're on. So if you're on one of the business plans, this can change. But for the basic free plan, this is what the polling is set at. So every 5 minutes, it's going to be checking for these updates. So if you do, let's say, add a database and it doesn't run your workflow immediately, that's why. Give it a few minutes and then it should run. Now let me explain a little bit about new database item and updated database item. Inside of our Notion, we have a few different projects here. As you can see here, all those projects we're working with. Let's go ahead and just use this monthly budget one. We can use this for personal or work stuff, but we'll talk about how this works with our triggers. So if we are working within our monthly budget page, our Notion project, whenever we are, let's say, adding a new item, which is kind of a record, which we can see from these triggers. So these are our database items, updated database items. These are going to happen on the project level. So within a monthly budget, let's say we're adding in a new client and then we're putting in an amount here in Notion, right? So what this is doing is that new item within our monthly budget is what's going to run our automation. So if we're looking at our automation and we wanted to run a workflow off of that, adding something to that monthly budget, we can click new database item. Then we have a filter. We'll select the database ID. And if we go down, we will see we have our income monthly. This is the database that we're using. Remember, we're over here in our monthly budget, and we have these 2 different tables. We have our income table and our expenses table. So we can also add other filters for custom fields that we have in HighLevel. But other than that, those are the main fields that you're going to be working with Notion. So this should be enough, and we can go ahead and also test our trigger. Now, testing this trigger is important because this shows you what information we're getting from Notion, so you can utilize it in HighLevel. So when we're looking at this, we're getting information like the object, the page name, right? The ID, the created time, the ID from the user, things like this. We can utilize these custom fields in the rest of our workflows, but this gives you an idea of what information we're collecting from Notion. So once we have this trigger set up for new database items in our income table, we can click save trigger. And now we will be good to go with that trigger. Now, off of that, we can add new activities within HighLevel. So if we are adding a new client, maybe this is how we're recording new clients in our project management process. Maybe we want to send them a document. Then we can add something like a document template. It sends them an estimate or an agreement, something like that. And then it sends out of HighLevel. So this allows you to combine workflow actions from HighLevel and triggers with Notion or to do complex workflows between the 2 platforms. So within our workflow actions, we have about 12 different current Notion actions. We have create database item, retrieve page, add content to a page, create page, restore database item, find database items, add comments, find comments, get page and children, update database items, and find page by title. These are all helpful actions that can allow us to manage our data in Notion. The ones that you're probably going to be using the most, depending on your use case, is create database item, retrieve page, create page. These sort of ones which are allowing us to create and retrieve data from Notion are going to be the ones we will use the most. So a really simple example use case for this would be, let's go ahead and get rid of this Notion trigger. We're going to use a form submission from HighLevel. Let's say we have a VSL opt-in form And whenever we are collecting our information from this form, we're then going to trigger an action in Notion. So we got rid of that document action, and then we're going to add in our Notion action for create database item. Now, within each one of these triggers, we're going to have different filters, but the main ones are going to be selecting the database, selecting the page, and finding the projects that we're actually looking for. So the first filter is going to be the database itself. So let's say we're doing it in the income monthly. Whenever we're getting a form submitted, let's say we are adding a new client. So we're adding this to our income tracker. Here we have it right here. We'll add in the amount, and then we'll add in the item for new client. So that way, whenever a form is submitted, then we can send this information over to Notion. Now, one of the reasons I love Notion and I love this setup with HighLevel is because Notion puts together databases and project management in a way that makes it really easy to understand and digest. As we can see here, we can build kind of a custom database or a custom interface for ourselves to manage things like income and expenses and projects, things like this. You can make these custom platforms within Notion, and now you can manage them kind of from HighLevel. So a really easy example would be tracking expenses or tracking clients. Whenever you have new clients come in, you add them to your tables and you can manage them from here. Whenever you have cancellations, you can remove them from Notion using our automations. So you can do lots of really cool things in order to create custom interfaces to manage what you have in HighLevel with Notion. So feel free to dive into all of these different actions. My favorite ones are creating database items, retrieving pages, creating pages, because you can even create custom interfaces from HighLevel kind of by creating new pages. And just dive into each one of these with their filters. Obviously, like we said, you're going to have to select things like parent pages whenever you're doing things like this. You can add in titles, content, even things like icons, which is really cool because you can add in emojis or URLs of icons to display within Notion. So if you want to have something really custom like this, you can set that up with HighLevel so that way it manages it completely on its own. This is really useful for teams doing project management because you can have all of your team members within Notion and then manage everything from HighLevel on the back end. So this is really establishing HighLevel as a powerful backend to operate out of and allowing us to use platforms like Notion to manage projects, create interfaces, manage our databases, and things like that. This is super exciting. Feel free to dive into all of the triggers and actions. And if you have any questions, just go to the help doc. As always, my name is Andrew, and thank you very much for watching.